Machine here, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel. 20-minute video for 2 minutes worth of content. Gold.
Team Liquid have the best chance to defeat Astralis and potentially end their reign, dethrone them as world number ones. Not MIBR, FaZe Clan, Natus Vincere, ENCE, Renegades even. Each of those teams have their own obvious flaws. Like MIBR is obviously a complete mess, despite, in theory, such big names. Even Cold Zero has been in pretty poor form, which for me is a sign that they're in bad trouble. You see from the map pool, they're all over the place. They don't even seem to have an identity themselves. So, okay, they're out of the equation for now. You go to FaZe Clan. Sure, FaZe Clan has the ultimate puncher's chance still. If Nico's as good as he is all year long, and then anyone else steps up, you have a chance. You have a shot at it. Probably still not going to beat Astralis in a best of 3, usually, though. Still probably not going to win the tournament. You can't rely upon that, right? They're way too up and down because they're based on individual play, and they have a weak T side because Nico hasn't been particularly adept at being a world-class in-game leader, unsurprisingly. Na'Vi relies way too much on Simple because he has to do well. And then they also rely on Electronic doing very well. And actually, that hasn't been something reliable over the last 8-9 months. Then you look at ENCE. Okay, ENCE have only done it once, basically, in terms of winning in a big high-pressure scenario. And then what happened? They got to the final of the major, they had this amazing run, and they matched up terribly against Astralis, and Astralis took care of them. That would probably happen again. Astralis, unfortunately, has a very poor team versus team matchup directly against Astralis. So if someone else could beat Astralis, ENCE could have a shot at it. Actually, they've yet to win any big championships, but even so, the Astralis aspect, that's a big blocking point for them. They're the final boss for ENCE, as it were. Renegades has a similar problem. For me, ENCE is Enstralis, Renegades is Australis. Like, these teams have a lot of the qualities that Astralis has, even in terms of being able to beat more skilled lineups, teams with better star players. The problem is, that makes Astralis have all their strengths and more, because what are the big strengths of Renegades? They have pretty good tactics, nice map pool that they exploit well, their team players, some of the best in the world. Those are all Astralis' best qualities. So overcoming Astralis is going to be very, very hard. And similar to ENCE, you've yet to actually do it. Like, ENCE made one final. Renegades made a nice top 4 at Star Series. No one's taken trophies, though. Like, these are tournaments where, and there have been tournaments this year where you could have taken trophies with no Astralis. Yet to happen yet for any of these squads. So, at the moment, Team Liquid is the best one for the reasons I'll now outline. Let's start with skill, shall we? Because it's no small matter to say that Team Liquid is a more skilled lineup than Astralis. I mean, I pointed this out in a video a few weeks back, but I think this is the most skilled lineup in all of CSGO right now. Both collectively, if you added some sort of like skill rating, the overall total for the team would be more than any other team, but even man for man. You go every man and you put them against anyone else from the other team, there's no one's going to be beating this squad. Like, Nitro, the only guy who fragged better than him as an in-game leader was Glaive at times last year, and he's playing very well this year as Nitro, actually. Someone like Stewie, if he's going to be like your worst player, that's a pretty good worst player to have, right? Naf, OllieJ, Twist, we know how good these guys are. You go and look at the stats. We've got some pretty good stats for OllieJ, Naf, Twist. They're all putting up the good numbers you'd want from star players. 3 of them fairly consistent in terms of numbers, event to event to event. Nitro is way higher than you'd expect him to be. Stewie's the lowest, but brings so much in terms of what he can do for the matchup, in terms of adding some versatility to the squad, giving them other strengths. Also, obviously, has a slightly different mentality, a bit more aggressive than some of the other players who tended to be a bit more passive. All good signs. Now, you go and look at FaZe Clan. Yeah, FaZe Clan had that. They used to be better than Astralis in terms of raw skill. The problem is, they're not at the moment. Some players like Olofmeister are playing terribly. Guardian very hit and miss. Then you look, Rain's only just come back the last few months. So FaZe had it, but they don't have a stable roster. And actually, they don't have a stable IGL situation during Astralis' peak. That, by the way, is the real what-if of the Astralis era, is what if Olofmeister didn't have to leave the lineup? What if they played those next 3 to 4 months with the original FaZe Clan lineup and they went head-to-head with Astralis? Because they'd already beaten them at Katowice just before Astralis went God mode. They had a great matchup, they had some interesting map pool aspects, they had a lot of firepower, and they had an in-game leader in Carrigan who'd beaten Astralis many times and knew how their minds worked. And they had players like Nico and others who, quite frankly, until they got really good, thought Astralis was pretty overrated. And I think some of their players, they don't like their style of play, as you've seen by some of the kind of snippy comments and then some of the sort of jousting about smoke bugs and all the rest of it later in the year. So that's the only real time other than Team Liquid that had the pieces to really do it. You look at the versatility in terms of personnel on Team Liquid, it's really impressive. So Twist's Nitro OllieJ and Stewie have all played in their careers as entry players. So you can choose not only who does it in this particular team, but you could vary it up a lot depending on map and half and even how a game's going. You could have someone rotate in and do something different. You could give teams totally different looks, just as I've always advocated actually for teams who have a double AWP setup. Swap the AWPs from time to time. That way the opponent doesn't know, and they're actually, first of all, going to sometimes just run right into a counter that the other guy doesn't do. And secondly, they're then going to adapt, trying to figure out who is there, which puts an extra layer in their mind to have to think about, to second guess, to have to scout out, to have to use more utility maybe. This is a great aspect. So in the same sense, you could switch up the entries so easily depending on what people's form's like, what the map is, what the opponent is. Then you look, Twists and OllieJ have clearly shown a tendency to be willing to lurk. They don't mind being a lurk players. So again, you can go with a lot of different options there as to who you put where in the squad, which I think means you can overcome certain individual dips in form if you want to. In terms of hybrid players, players who can AWP as well, we know Naf can actually be a very good AWPer. Stewie is a decent AWPer. Nitro's a pretty good AWPer as much as the in-game leader at the same time, and he did it when needed to be. That's a pretty nice selection of people, again, who can pick to be the hybrid AWPer, or who we could drop an AWP in a map, and therefore you don't know who's going to have an AWP on what CT side at what particular time in a game if you're the opponent. And then they're all from North America. So there are no communication issues. There are no cultural clashes. Everything's lined up to be really nice because, as everyone knows, in history, the teams that have won the major, I won't go and say are all from the same country because obviously Gambit ruins that, right? You have players from Kazakhstan, Russia and Ukraine. But I would say this, they all are fluent in the primary language of the team. That is the factor that has united all the major champions. So that would apply to Team Liquid as well, whereas it wouldn't apply to teams like FaZe Clan, for example. Anyway, the map pool is a aspect I think is actually underrated for Team Liquid. I made a video on it, and I'll summarise some of the points here, but if you want more depth, go and look there. Because as I pointed out there, they not only have a really nice map pool, they hinted at some depth and width rather that they've been able to show recently. They increased the depth they had on some maps, and they've continued to show a veto process that suggests they know how strong they are, and they're making use of it. So as a very quick summary, their Dust 2 was already good. It was 5-1 when I made that video. It's now 7-2, and the two losses are one to Astralis, who was insane on it, and insane against Team Liquid, and the second one was against FaZe in a final of Blast Pro Series Miami. And remember, they're a team that tend to lose in finals, so that doesn't even feel like it's necessarily as legit a loss on Dust 2. And by the way, FaZe, pretty good puncher's chance on Dust 2, nice skill level, right? Then you look at the fact that FaZe game, which was in a final, and therefore a little bit different to a lot of the other games Team Liquid's played, that was the first time they lost the T-side on Dust 2. So Dust 2, incredibly strong for Liquid, and right now, you can play that against almost anyone. No one's going to permaban that first. Then they had Overpass, which they'd won 4, drawn 1, lost 1 on. They've now won 8, drawn 1 and lost 1. Now that is really, really good. That is really big time shit. They've still only lost their CT side once, which was against Astralis, also in a final, Blast Pro Series, Sao Paulo rather it was. So they're at Overpass right now, absurdly good, and a lot of teams are letting Overpass through, but do not like it. So they have a really nice pick matchup against some of these teams. Their Mirage continues to look good despite the stats not being so crazy. Went from 2-2 to 3-3. But who have they lost to? Well, one of those was FaZe in a final. Yeah, that's actually fine. In a final, it's a different manner for Team Liquid. We've seen that. So once they get over finals, these issues might go away. Cash was one where I said they can play it, but it's more of a dodgy one. Now, obviously, Vertigo's replacing it anyway, which is a little bit of a shame because Cash would have been a nice, punish pick for Team Liquid. But who knows? I could see Vertigo in terms of how scrimmy it is, in terms of how much it looks like a dual map. I look at it like as a fucking Call of Duty S&D map, to be honest. I think they could be a very, very strong team on that map. I feel like it's going to be a hard map to have a consistent win rate on. You go and look at the other maps. Their Inferno did get better, like I told you it would. It went from 1-3 to 3-3. Well, the two of the three losses against Astralis, who are at the moment on an 18-game winning streak on LAN on Inferno. They are unbeatable on that map. On Nuke, they started to play it finally. They went from not playing it at all. They played it twice and won it. They beat FaZe Clan on it, and they beat Lazarus on it. And they won the T-side against FaZe on it, so really positive signs. Finally, they haven't played Train at all. They still ban it. They're looking like they're not going to play that, quite frankly. So it'll depend what happens with Vertigo as to whether Train ever enters the map pool. Then you go and look at their bans and picks. For their first ban, they've only expanded it. Now they've banned 4 different maps. They've banned Overpass, Nuke, Train, Mirage. Well, I've just told you they play Overpass and they play Mirage if they need to. And if they have to, they play Nuke. It depends on the opponent. For the second rotation ban, they've now banned 5 maps. Inferno, Mirage, Overpass, Nuke, Train. Well, Inferno, Overpass, those are actually good maps for this team. Nuke, a map they can play. Mirage, certainly it's in their wheelhouse. They're banning based on the opponent. That is a very positive sign if you want to see a team become number one. And then in terms of picks, they have 4 different picks. They had Cash, okay, that's going out the map pool. They have Inferno, still a good team on it. They just lost to Astralis on it. They have Dust 2, which they're absurdly good on, and Overpass they're incredibly good on. This is a really nice map pool to have. Then you go and look at their play over 2019. I think they're underrated. They've won a good international tournament, not a really big one, prestigious. Yeah, there were a lot of problems with the IBEP Masters. But you look at the teams there in the format, that's a legit tournament to win still. They won a big tournament. They made the final of a smaller one. Blast Pro Series, of 2 smaller ones, the 2 Blast Pro Series, Sao Paulo and Miami, and they still made top 8 of the majors and got legend. Okay, that's it. Where's the failures? Oh, and they got out of their group at Pro League. That's pretty fucking good. People are really underestimating this team. In best of 3s, they've played 8 and they've only lost 3. Well, who did they lose to? They lost 1 to Astralis. That's perfectly fine. Lost to 1 to FaZe. Admittedly, that probably should have happened, but FaZe played out of their minds. And the other one they've lost was to ENCE, which no one really knew how strong ENCE were. They underestimated themselves. Other than that, they've won 5 best of 3s. They've beaten some good teams out there. So, and including Astralis in a best of 3. Then you go and you look. In best of 1s, they've won 12, they've drawn 1, and they've lost 1. They've only lost 1 best of 1 map out of 14 played. So if you add together all the maps that they've played, they've won 25, drawn 1, and lost 10. So that's like a 71% win rate or something. That's probably fucking pretty good. Like, that's very legit. As I said, they're never failing in group stages. In fact, the worst they've done is place top 8 at the major. Aside from that, they made every final this year. This team's mad underrated, especially in terms of all the factors, all the potential, and even what they show you now. So, okay, let's be fair though. What's stopping them winning championships and therefore gaining ground on Astralis? What's stopping them take the top spot? Well, first of all, it is Astralis, right? Because they've never beaten them in a best of 3 series, except IBEP Masters. That one time, which has never been replicated, because when they played them at the Blast Pro Series Sao Paulo final, that looked a lot more like traditional Team Liquid, where they fell apart on some of the maps. The Veto looked good, but didn't work out for them. Well, to be fair, it is the same for everyone else. No one generally beats Astralis in finals. It's happened like twice ever or something, maybe 3 times ever. If you go and you look, yeah, 3 times. I want to see them play Astralis in a semi-final or in a quarter-final. Quarter-final will be really interesting because that's where there's the least amount of actual stage pressure. It's still the same opponent, but they're not fully warmed up and peaked for the tournament. That's where I would really love to see Team Liquid and Astralis play a few times. Because I think Team Liquid could get them. I think it would remove a lot of the big factors. Because yes, clearly big pressure matches, clearly stage matches, clearly finals are having an issue on Team Liquid. They've now lost to Mouse and to FaZe, and they've just blown a few chances. So it's something psychological is going on there. Well, to be fair, as you've seen with Astralis, you can overcome some of these issues, as you've seen with many players in their history. As you saw actually with the Luminosity SK guys, they were losing all the time in finals and coming second or third early 2016, and then they ticked through and they were able to become champions finally. So there is a psychological component there. So the bad news is it's tough to solve those. The good news is if you solve them, it's nothing in game. So if you solve it, your in-game aspect becomes a catalyst that just makes you way better in game because you become your normal level in a big final. Because we see Team Liquid's normal level is very, very high. It's just in finals, something goes to shit. You look at the fact that Twists has been generally underwhelming in a bunch of these finals and big matches. Well, to be fair, the guy does have a very serious illness. He's trying to work through it, as Get Right and Device did in the past, but he's very, very young when he's got this. Obviously, I'm sure psychologically that's taken its strain. So if you can overcome that at all, you're going to get better. And you've got so much firepower, it hasn't even necessarily been that necessary, or needed rather, for Twists to be the best player. There are very good players elsewhere. The one that concerns me a bit is Naf. He's sometimes been a bit humdrum or disappeared in finals. He's just a weird guy. I would feel like that's on Adren. Or the in-game leader, Nitro. You're the guys who've got to figure out how to get him dialed in and online in the big finals, because that would be a game changer for me, is if you just had Naf playing at the star level you can see him play elsewhere. I also do think they underestimated some lesser teams. I think they definitely underestimated ENCE and looked past them and looked at the Veto and thought this is great, which it did look great on paper. Thought we're going to 2-0 these guys. These at worst 2-1 them. So I just think they didn't have any clue how good ENCE were. To be fair, none of us did, right? And we've since gone on to see ENCE looks better. They also lost what I think is a slam dunk final against FaZe, where you look at that Veto should be Team Liquid all day long. They'd already beaten Astralis at the tournament. Again, I think they got ahead of themselves. I think they underestimated the opponent, and then they have that psychological pressure when they're in big finals. When they see the finish line coming up, they become fucking Dick Dastardly, don't they? So, a last issue that I think has held them back is lack of experience / proven winners. I know someone's going to say, what do you mean? Sure, you can't win a major, and he won that EPL years ago. That ain't the same as being someone who's won many championships. That ain't the same as going into finals as a favourite and winning the championship and stringing 2 or 3 championships together and winning championships when you have one bad result and then you come right back like Astralis does and look even better at the next tournament. That's one thing they lack. And getting into that psychological frame of what a champion's mindset is a big deal. There's a lot of very great players and teams that hung around 2nd to 4th and had a lot of nice placings and were in a lot of championships and won the odd one, but they weren't like killers. They weren't champions in the true sense. They weren't consistent winners. So ignoring the C2K angle, that's something they still have to develop in this team. They've gotten used to being a very good team. They've gotten used to being contenders, perennial contenders. They've gotten used to now winning some smaller events. Now it's time to take the final jump up the mental, psychological, competitive hierarchy ladder, as it were, the final rung, which is to become a true champion, embrace that mindset, to not have any excuses, to play your best in the final, in the moment where you have to, with at least whatever resources you have, and to let the chips fall where they're made, to lose some of them, to win some of them, to sometimes win when you shouldn't win, to accept when you lose when you thought you should have won, and to come back stronger next time. I actually think Team Liquid is underrated right now. I think people gave up on them because they still lose in big finals. I think the ENCE loss stings way too much for some people, which, by the way, it isn't even as bad now as it seemed at the time, because we know ENCE is actually pretty legit. Sure, they haven't won a championship themselves, but we know they're pretty good. I think this team has a real chance to do some special things this year. Not least, by the way, because Astralis is now skipping a whole bunch of events. Like I told you, 3 big events from this year, 4 as far as I know. So this is a real chance for Team Liquid to win some of those events, to gain ground on them. And if any team's going to do it right now, without roster moves to Na'Vi or FaZe or whoever else, without ENCE and Renegades just stepping up another level complete, it's going to be this team. This is the squad to do it. They have the pieces. They have the versatility, the depth, the map pool, the veto. They have so much. Yes, they still have some flaws that hold them back, but those can be overcome. This video was generously supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas, Snazore Westerlund, Butt Pounder 420, JDubs, Chi Mao, Daniel Olivar, Jiangheng Lu, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, NateDOhDoubleG, Alexander Rao, and as always, a special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Now, do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my work? Maybe you want to ask me a question for my monthly AMA. Do you want teasers for who the guests are on my upcoming content? Maybe you want to take part in a monthly esports discussion with yours truly. Well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.